town called Audubon, southwest Iowa, right where it ought to have been. 23 houses, 14 saloons, and the feed mill in 1930. Had a neon sign said resume speed, and the bus came through when they felt the need, and it stopped at a place there in town called the Old Home Cafe.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
I remember it well.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Now, my daddy was a music-loving man. He stood 6'7", had big old hands. He'd lost 2 fingers and a chainsaw, but he could still play the violin. And Mom played piano, just the keys in the middle, and Dad played storm on his 3-fingered fiddle, because that's all there was to do back there, folks, except to go downtown and watch haircuts. So I was raised on Dust Bowl tunes, you see. I had a 6-tube radio, no TV. It was so doggone hot I had to wet the bed in the summer just to keep cool. Yeah, many's a night I'd lay awake, waiting for a distant station break, just a setting and a wetting and a letting that radio fry. Well, I listened to Nashville and Tulsa and Dallas, and Oklahoma City gave my ear a callus, and I'll never forget them announcers at 3 a.m. They'd come on and say, friends, there's many a soul who needs us, so send them letters and cards to Jesus. That's J-E-S-U-S, friends, care of Del Rio, Texas.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
Box G-O-D.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
But the place I remember on the edge of town was a place where you really got the hardcore sound. Yeah, a place where truckers used to stop on their way to Des Moines. There was signs all over that windowsill, like a devil don't get you, then Roosevelt will, and the bank don't sell any beer, and we don't cash checks. We got us an agreement. Now, them truckers never talked about nothing but hauling, and the 4-letter words were really appalling. They thought them hometown gals was nothing but toys for their amusement. Drove Chevys and Macs with big old stacks. They was always complaining about their livers and backs, but they was fast-living, truck-driving son of a guns out looking for trouble, and I wanted to be one. Now, the gal waiting tables was really classy. Had a rebuilt motor on a fairly new chassis, and she knew how to handle them truckers. Her name was Mavis Davis. She'd pour him a coffee and then bat her eyes and then listen to him tell her some big fat lies. Then she'd ask him how the wife and kids was back in Joplin.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
They'd deny they was married.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Now, Mavis sure had all of her ducks in a row. Weighed 98 pounds, put on quite a show. Reminds you of a burlap bag full of year-old bobcats fighting. There's no proposition that she couldn't handle next to her. There was nothing could hold a candle. Not too much upstairs, but from there on down, Disneyland. Now, the truckers, on the other hand, was really crass. They remind you of fingernails rubbing on glass, stomping on in, leaving tracks all over the Montgomery Ward linoleum. Yeah, they pound them counters and kick them stools. They was always picking fights with the local fools. With one look at Mavis, and they'd turn into a bowl full of cream of wheat. Well, I'll never forget them days gone by. I was just a kid, about 4 foot high, but I think about Mavis and them truckers every now and again. Yeah, the sights and the sounds of the Great Depression, no doubt about it. They made an impression. I'll keep them with me till I head for that big agency in the sky.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
On Interstate 80.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Now, 30 years later at B&J, just the day before the day after yesterday, I was sitting in my office. It was almost time to go home. Well, the telephone rang. It was Accountman Stern. Says, I got some news you're going to like to learn. He says, we need to come up with a brand new way to sell bread. I said, what kind? He says, old home bread is the one I mean. They want a whole nother kind of a TV scene. He says, the only restrictions they placed upon us is don't spend an awful lot of money. So we sat on down, got our heads together, and I wrote him a song, and he wrote him a letter, and says, we're coming on up to see you about Friday a week. Signed, best regards. Well, before we knew it, it was time to go. So we got in the truck, and we put her in low, and we pointed her north for the land of the midnight sun. That's Sioux City, Iowa. Well, the account man says I'm going to drive because I want to make sure that we get there alive. You creative folk have a habit of doing strange things, like getting lost on the cloverleaf.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
He got lost on the
The old
cloverleaf.
home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Well, we got to the bakery, gave the bell a ring, says, Mr. Metz, we got a song to sing, so sit on down, take your shoes off, and give it a listen. We kept it friendly. Well, he heard it and liked us and bought us and hired us, and as of today, he still ain't fired us. And the spots to which you're about to eyeball are coming right after this verse. Now, it seems like only yesterday when I went to work for B&J, but I never forgot that listening, picking, and singing the country way. Yeah, them walking, talking, truck stop blues came back to life in '72 as the old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Well, I was trucking bread up north of Custer, had a road full of holes, an axle buster, had an old home 14-wheeler trying to jump 'em all day, hopping like a rabbit. Had a load of white and a load of wheat that's guaranteed fresh and ready to eat for the old home filler up and keep on a trucking cafe. Bread City, yeah. Well, I parked myself and got a load of the waitress. She's stacked like a truck and her name was Mavis. I ordered up a half-dozen slices of Old Home White, maximum enriched. She took my order, leaned over and said, what you gonna have to go with your bread? We got an Old Home truck driving special that you ought to try. I said, what is it? Said a side of fries and a chicken fried steak, an Old Home pie and a chocolate shake, and with your Old Home bread, it's a bargain at $1.28, and that includes tax. Well, I ordered up a special and wiped her dry, but before I left a load of rye at the Old Home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Old Home is good bread.
Mr. Metz says that's a real good spot. You agency fellers have done me a lot, but we sell a heck of a lot more than just plain old bread, son. We've got cakes and pies and rolls and donuts, 27 flavors from plain to coconut, and out in the back of this here plant we got a half-dozen truckloads of nice fresh buns.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home
It is definitely Bun City out
The old home
there.
filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
We got hot dog buns, hamburger buns, we got sesame buns and ordinary buns. Well, a fella might say we are up to our armpits in buns. So what I want is another spot along the lines of what you already got, but this time lay it on thick about Old Home buns, because they've guaranteed fresh. So we went on back to the drawing board, took another look at the storyboard, and wherever we could, we sprinkled in a mess of fresh bun shots. Now we figured that the instrumental track was fine, so we wrote up some more of them truck driving lines and come out of that session with a foot-stomping Old Home bun spot.
Well, Interstate 80, I was cooking alive, thermometer read about 105. I had a 10-ton Old Home bread truck pumping all day, pumping out steam. Had 1,000 cubes and they was running cool. Was till I run out of bread truck fuel at the Old Home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Give me 10 gallon. Well, she filled my tank. I said, thank you, honey. Her name was Mavis. I gave her the money. Says, how's about an Old Home burger and an ice cream cone? Cool myself off with. Put a patty on the grill and back she came. Says, tell me, truck man, what's your name? I said, C.W. McCall, and I haul for Old Home. You call me C.W. Well, I gave her a wink. She eyeballed me. It was Old Home love, plain to see. And then she handed me an Old Home burger and a pretty pink tray. Nice fresh bun. Well, I finished up the burger, said, bye now, hun. Then I left her a truckload of Old Home buns for the Old Home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Old Home is good buns.
Well, Mr. Metz says he liked that too, but there's one more spot he'd like us to do, because he says he does a pretty fair country business in what's known in the trade as sweet rolls. Got cinnamon twists and pecan spins, got blueberry tarts and apricot thins. He says they'd taste real good on a cold rainy night in a cafe.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
With a cup of hot tea.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
So the spot what you're going to see called for heavy rain, so we had to find a way to make it rain on the plane. So we hired us a fellow with a 1,000-gallon tank on wheels and 3 big hoses. We hooked them hoses to the side of the truck and worked up some pressure, mire and the muck, and proceeded to wet down 2 miles of Route 14 just north of Irving, Texas. Well, a fella pulled up, had a star on his car, says he was the sheriff, says, "Where's the fire?" And then he gave us a ticket for impeding the flow of traffic in Denton County. "Now, Sheriff, we're making a commercial," we said, and then we gave him some rolls and some old home bread, and he gave us his official permission to make it rain for a good half hour down in Texas.
Well, trucking old home just west of Cleaver. The road was wet, slick as a beaver. A windshield wiper been a whopping up a storm all day. Heavy preset. Well, I popped the clutch, gave the tranny a spin, geared on down, slid on in to the old home filler up and keep on trucking cafe. Hung up my slicker. Well, I grabbed the stool and spied the waitress. Pretty little thing, name of Mavis. Ordered up a nice fresh old home pecan roll, a cup of hot tea. Well, I poured the coffee, she as hot as a pistol. Took one sip, destroyed my whistle. Had to cool my choppers with additional old home rolls. Is guaranteed fresh. Well, I looked outside, it was cold and wet. I had a truck full of rolls, so there we sat, just Mavis and me in the truck and the rolls in the rain. Yeah, let her pour. Well, them old home rolls was a pure delight, and if it hadn't cleared, I'd stayed all night at the old home filler up and keep on trucking cafe. Old home is good rolls.
That was last year. This year we've introduced a couple of new characters in the old home spots. CW has a dog called Old Sloan, and Mavis has a mother. The 3 spots are called Hot Dog, Sno Job, and Heavy Date.
Well, it was I-29. We was cutting the fog, just me and Old Sloan. Old Sloan's my dog. We had a heat-seeking old home bread missile out of Sioux City with a load of fresh donuts. We made a right turn sign, gave Tranny a shake, and took the Honey Creek ramp and applied some brake at the old home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe, looking for Mavis. Now, we've been every place between here and South Sioux, and we've seen us a truck stopping waiters or two, but this gal's built like a burlap bag full of bobcats. She's got it together. Well, she come out to meet us. I was checking her order. 36 plain and a dozen assorted. Old Sloan just sat there watching and wagging and wishing. I says, "You wait in the truck, boy." And then I went inside. She says, "What'll it be?" It says, "A plain for him and a choco for me." And she come back with a big old sack full of old home dunkers and a bone for Sloan. I said, "Much obliged." Old Sloan gave a bark. I left her an invoice, and he left his heart at the old home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Yeah, old home is good donuts. Trucking old home, I was working a blizzard. She is colder than a Minnesota well digger's gizzard. I was up to my drive shaft in 18 inches of slush. Heavy white stuff. I had a jackknifing rig that drove like a sled. Had a busted chain and a load of bread for the old home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Mavis was snowed in. Well, I stopped my boots off and gave her a grin. Shook out my cuffs and tracked on in. Says, "How's about warming up a stool for an old home sled dog named CW?" Says, "I'll tell you what, instead of chewing the fat, I'll fix a 2-on-1. I says, "What's that?" She says, "A pair of fried eggs on a slice of that old home stone ground and a quart of hot chili." She says, "It's cold outside. I bet your truck won't start." Says, "You know what to say, cold truck, warm heart." Well, she threw me a look that'd melt the crust off a half a loaf of old home butter top. Well, it snowed 6 feet up a telephone post, but Mavis and me stayed warm as toast at the old home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. Yeah, old home is good bread. Saturday night at doing County Road 11. Been a trucking old home since 7:15. Yeah, a fella might say I've been rode hard and put up wet. Time for a sea break. Then I spied a sign says eat gas now. I decided to whip in and get me some chow at the old home filler up and keep on the trucking cafe. It never closes. Well, I got me a stool, took a load off my shoes, made Mavis an offer that she couldn't refuse. It says, "How'd you like to go for a ride in an old home bread truck? I just had it washed." She allowed us out. It sounded like a whole lot of fun, but we was going to have to wait until the dishes was done. Was it all right with me if she brought along her mother as a chaperone? I said, why not? Well, we geared that tranny into Old Home Low, and the three of us went to see a picture show. Yeah, I took her to the drive-in theater over by Pisgah to see True Grit. Saw the Late Show, had an Old Home snack, and then along about 2 o'clock, I hauled them on back to the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On Truckin' Cafe. Yeah, Old Home is good things. Well, 10 p.m. and we was going to town. Yeah, Mavis and me was a trucking on down at the semi-annual volunteer firemen's ball in downtown Pisgah. They had colored lights strung up for mood. They'd spiked the punch and they'd catered the food from the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Love it or leave it. Now, Mavis's dress about to set her free. Had musk oil on her like it set me free, and she's wearing a $10 orchid I'd bought her at the greenhouse over to Des Moines. Of course, Mother is there making Old Home sandwiches and checking on Mavis and bugging the band, which is Roy McCoon out of Fort Calhoun and his nuclear power plant boys. Did the Council Bluff shuffle with the Pisgah grip and then an Old Home stomp with a real nice dip. She is soft as an 8-pack of Old Home hamburger buns. That says I think 'em in love. And then we trucked on home, said you had a nice time, said so did I. And then I kissed her goodnight at the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On the Truckin' Cafe. Old Home is a ball. We was trucking Old Home up north of Ute. She was pouring down pitchforks and raining to boot. We had an Old Home breader with a burnt-out clutch and 18 wheels in the mud. I was all strung out, and Old Sloan was a mess, so I got on the CB and SOS'd them at the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Mayday. It says, breaker, breaker, this here is McCall. And Mavis come on and says, where are you all? I says, we're up north of Ute in the mud, and we could sure use a tow job. Do you copy? She says loud and clear, keep your pants on, honey. Just sit right there and don't do nothing funny. We'll be there as soon as we can scrape the grill off and fire up the Chevy. 10-4 and I love you. Well, we sat in that truck till 4:45. I ate a half a loaf of white and Old Sloan had a pie, and then Mavis and her mother and the Old Home wrecker arrived. I says, what kept you? She says, take it out of gear, never mind where we've been. Just sit there and stare, and then she towed us on in to the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Yeah, Old Home is far out. Well, 7 a.m., we was heading for water, going bullhead fishing with Mavis and Mother. Yeah, poles out the window, Old Sloan in the middle, and a can full of worms on the dash. We was all up front, had our boat on the rear, full of Old Home bread and a cooler of beer from the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Carp City, yeah. Well, we got to the hole, did a reverse shift, backed up our craft and set her adrift with Mother and Sloan, the bait and the poles, and all of our gear and our beer in it. Started floating away, so I waded in to catch it. Old Sloan spied a duck and jumped in to fetch it. Then he swam on out and shook himself off all over you-know-who. Wet sneakers. Well, we all got in and rode out to the middle. Broke out the bread and bologna and pickles, made 3 nice triple-decker Old Home truck stop specials, and commenced the fishing. Caught a tire and a tube and a yucky old sack. Then it started to rain, so we trucked on back to the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Yeah, Old Home is a trip. Well, me and Old Sloan was getting on down, working the blacktop north of town. Had 18 wheels worth of Old Home breader on a nice, bright, sunshiny day. We was beating the bushes and looking for fun, heading for Pisgah, delivering buns to the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Well, we whipped on in and commenced to parking, when all of a sudden, Old Sloan started barking. I thought that dog was going to have a first-class conniption. He just come unglued, because what he spied was a little black poodle with a rhinestone collar and a bow in the middle, just sitting right there by the diesel pump, watching and a-waiting and a-wiggling. I turned the key and gave the brake a yank, and Old Sloan went through me like a Sherman tank. He went straight for that there poodle, commenced checking her bow knot. Well, I opened the bag and gave them both a bun. It was Old Home love right there at the pump at the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Yeah, Old Home is a romance. Well, 10:15 coming out of Mondayman, stacks a blowing and my cubes a flaming. Had a truckload of Old Home bread stuff and just couldn't wait. Yeah, I had 1,000 wheats and 1,000 whites, and my dad was along just for the ride to the Old Home Filler Up and Keep On a Truckin' Cafe. Well, we pulled on in and commenced unloading, and Dad went in for an old home donut and a cup of that old home 100-mile hot black sea like to boil his gums down. Well, he's checking the menu and fixing to read it when out come Mother, says, "What'll it be? And I ain't seen you around here before. Who are you? And what's your handle?" He says, "Name's BQ, and I like your style." And he gave her one of them old home smiles. She took one look and says, "Look what the cat drug in. Where's your teeth?" Then he gummed his donut and he swallowed his pride, and I left her a half dozen old home whites for the old home filler-up and keep on the truckin' cafe. Mercy sakes, old home is a mouthful. Well, Saturday night, and I'd parked my truck. I'd just got paid. I had $100, and Mavis and me was a-setting in the booth, drinking coffee, playing the jukebox. I says, "I got a surprise. It's really neat, but I ain't got it here. It's across the street from the old home filler-up and keep on trucking cafe." She says, "Let's do it." So we locked the door and turned the sign around. We went a-walking across Pisgah town to the F.E. Miller Department and General Mercantile. He features old home bread, of course. Well, we trucked on back to the notion counter, and I says to F.E., "You can lay it upon her." And he reached in a drawer and come out with a little white box with a ribbon on it. Well, I paid F.E. his $98, went back across the street and opened it up. And you should have seen the look in them big blue eyes when she seen it. I says that little old ring cost a lot of bread, and from there on out, nothing else was said at the old home filler-up and keep on a truckin' cafe. Yeah, old home is a promise.
Said it, a whole bunch of others should get the credit, because it takes a lot of people these days to make a TV spot for the tube. So listen real careful and I'll give you the poop on who all helped in this commercial shoot for the old home filler-up and keep on the truckin' cafe.
Oh, the old home filler-up and keep on the truckin' with the old home filler-up.
Yeah, they did a real good job.
The old home filler-up and keep on the truckin' cafe.
Now, Mavis was played by Jeannie Cap. She's a high-tone gal, got a lot of class. She's built like a couple of Cub Scouts trying to set up a Sears Roebuck pup tent. Then there's your trucker, looks like Victor Jory, C.W. McCall in our epic story. His name's Jim Finlayson, and he never drove a truck in his life. Yeah, we shot the whole mess down in Old Big D, because it was the middle of winter back here, you see, and it's colder than the Minnesota well diggers gizzard in Nebraska at that time of year. So we headed on south to the land of cotton. Well, the weather down there was just about as rotten, but there we all were with our truck and our bread and our storyboards. We commenced to shooting anyway. Well, we got us a first-class commercial maker, yeah, 16-millimeter picture taker called Visual Presentations Incorporated out of Dallas, Texas. The director's name was Bert Rodriguez. Turned out to be about as good as we thought he was. I shot those suckers in 3 full days and 2 nights, including the inserts.
Oh, the old home filler-up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler-up.
For $17,000.
The old home filler-up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Now, the music track was Just Plain Happiness. Recorded that mother up in Minneapolis. A fella named Jenkins wrote the guitar chords for $1 a chord in the bottle. Man alive, I'm telling you, the fiddles and the guitars really flew. We laid 16 channels of reverberated truck stop sound in about a half an hour, and I did the singing myself. Well, that about does it for the production credits. You've seen all the spots from the leader to the edits, and I'm beginning to feel like I've been rode hard and put up wet. But before I go, I got something to leave you. Yeah, I thought for today is what I'm going to bequeath you, because this here story's got a first-class, genuine moral. The moral of the story is a simple conclusion. TV today is a mess of confusion. Those 60-second epics are a beacon in a 30-second world. Now, I know it's getting tougher now to buy yourself a minute, even tougher sometimes to figure what to put in it. But here's my philosophy on what you ought to do with the time.
Oh, the old home filler-up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler-up.
1 minute with Mavis.
The old home filler-up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Now, you see, them viewers are tired and ornery. They don't give a whit for your cinematography. All they ever want to do is sit on down, watch tube with a bottle of Falstaff. So don't feed them esoteric stuff like Fellini when they'd rather have Shaft and Henry Mancini. And don't hard sell them in the middle of a 6-spot break in the Guns of Navarone. Yeah, before their Sonys get disconnected, gotta hit them with a spot that's sort of unexpected. Them folks like a little entertainment along with their unique selling propositions. And along the way, if we can make them smile, well, we're all gonna be ahead by a country mile. Yeah, Rose is what we're all gonna come out like smelling. Did we sell any bread? Did we make any magic? Is grass green? Is the Pope a Catholic? We sold enough old home bread to make a million-decker sandwich. If the rolls we sold were laid end to end, they'd reach to L.A. and back again. And that don't even take into account them 14,000 bags of hot dog buns.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up.
6 flavors of fruit pie.
The old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Well, we made it on to Ad Age's 100 Best. We got a real nice Clio at the TV festival. We even got a Mavis fan club going up to Rapid City, South Dakota. The old home sales got 200% better, got 1,000 cards and a whole bunch of letters. Got one from a nun in Ogallala, said she wanted the words for her 4th grade English class. Well, the story is done and I've sung my song, and now I've got to be moving along. Yeah, I got to be heading on back to Interstate 80. But right here and now, you got an invitation for a cup of hot tea and some conversation at the old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
8 stools and a promise.
Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin'. Oh, the old home filler up and keep on a truckin' cafe.
They have got a real nice place there, folks.